This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Purse, here with your co-host, Bill Hamel.
I'm somewhat more comfortable collecting real estate than I am collecting other stuff.
Good morning, Bill.
Morning, Stephen. How are you today?
Good, how are you?
Excellent.
Here to talk about your property number 13.
Yeah, property number 13, as we just mentioned before we started recording, that's 572 Myrtle Avenue in Pine Hills neighborhood.
And what do you remember about this property? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
First thing that comes to mind, it was coming off of that burned out house on Hudson Avenue, that 6-month project. And went from that project right to 572 Myrtle. And here we are with another project where we were doing a heavy lift and spending more time, as I guess you can say, a general contractor.
And did you find this one on the MLS?
This one was off the MLS. That was the bread and butter at that point, where you open up that MLS and see what comes up. As we discussed in that last podcast, was you never know what you're going to see. Most of the time when you open the MLS, usually, nothing, but, that's why we check every day, sometimes a couple times a day, because stuff does come up with some patience. And 572 Myrtle popped up, I think, with a price point of like 30 grand. And that location, that price, I caught my interest and, scheduled a visit.
Do you remember the year, just to get a reference point?
This would have to be 2001, maybe still 2000, probably 2001 at this point.
Not too long ago. You said this was another project where you were acting as a general contractor. Was it that same homestead funding construction rehab product you used in the past for funding?
It was that homestead funding construction rehab project. It's funny, you said not too long ago. Oh boy.
Just 20 years.
You were in elementary school. Time flies. And, it does seem like it was quite a bit ago, based on, the whole journey.
Okay. And at this point, being a general contractor and using that product, is this your business model? It seems like that's the direction you're going.
At this point, after that project at 659 Hudson Avenue, boy, was that a long, heavy lift. But what became of that was beginning those really valuable construction relationships that now I'm able to utilize on the next projects or any type of work that was necessary on our current portfolio or future portfolio. So this one specifically was with Greg, who was continuing to build a portfolio with, and our buddy Doug, who I was speaking with yesterday in the office, getting some prices on what some snow plowing and lawn care would cost on our newest acquisitions at this point. But back then, Doug was similar to me and Greg, for that matter, where he was in the wintertime when he wasn't busy doing his lawn maintenance work. He was working with us, digging in, learning the construction business. And he was a great help for, a good stretch here, starting at 659 Hudson to 572 Myrtle. And he was along for the ride on the next couple of properties where, fortunately, when Greg was at work during the day, and normally I was doing the projects by myself during the day, I now had Doug, who was helping me do the that daily preparation of that new construction project. So he was now helping me, with the beginning stages of preparing walls, doing the joint compound, preparing it for paint, and all of that labor work that a little help was certainly invited at that point.
Yeah, it sounds like it would make the whole process a lot easier. Did Doug have equity in the property, or was he someone you hired to help you?
No, he was basically paid him, a good, fair hourly wage because he was, or he is, a very hard worker. So it was great at the time because, Doug and I, at that point, were both very hungry, just to make some money. And, he was with me, through this rehab, most of it anyway. And, based on him being a snow plowing contractor, lawn maintenance contractor, he had the dump truck and a lot of equipment along with him, and his hard work. Really, he was a great asset at this point.
As you know, I'm looking for someone to help me with construction. How did you find Doug?
Doug's a great friend. So, Doug's wife, Lisa, I have known since elementary school. And, the beauty of that, to kind of go off a little bit of a tangent, we have a real nice close knit inner circle of, still at this point in my life, there's, probably 15 or 20 of us that are still close friends from elementary, junior high, and high school. So, I met Doug through Lisa, and Doug's a great guy. We're close friends till to today. He just lives up the road from where I do. We were able to get him and Lisa into a great deal in Clifton Park on a county courthouse auction property. So, they've lived there for it was probably right around that time. They've probably been there for around 20 years, right around that time where he was helping out me and Greg. And, that's it's just a matter of those relationships.
Okay, so like anything else, you start with your inner circle and go out from there.
Yeah, that's the easiest way at that point. We're young. We're hanging out with each other, we're sharing experiences, and when opportunities come up, especially when, I'm getting my real estate career going. Doug was getting his lawn, snow contractor business going. A lot of times you're just looking to fill in gaps on how you can make some money.
Mm-hmm. Could you expand on the scope of work that was needed at this property?
Yeah, it was similar to what we had been doing. So it wasn't anything more than, if I look back, it was very similar, like the 862 Washington Avenue, one family rehab, which was property number 7. And it was patching walls, finishing hardwood floors. The beauty of these old buildings in our area, they typically all had the original hardwood floors, which are amazing because they're timeless. So, once you prep the walls, paint the walls, you refinish those original hardwood floors, and it's amazing what type of product you have at that point. And of course, there's always, miscellaneous along the way. I think we utilized our contact, Bob Jones, put in a heating system, probably did any of the rough plumbing that we may have had there. And other than that, probably a lot of miscellaneous. We were still in the mode of, doing things with as frugal of a budget as we possibly could. So, you're talking about painting kitchen cabinets, utilizing what was there for the bathroom fixtures, ultimately looking to just get to that fresh and clean product for that new rental ASAP.
And how long did it take you to rent this one?
This was we may have had to wait. If I remember correctly, it was a winter project. That's why I was able to utilize Doug on the off season. And I believe it was, finishing in like March-ish, so you hurry up and finish. And then, it ended up being typically a student type rental, being on the corner of Quail and Myrtle Avenue, a couple doors in. So it was prime for St. Rose, SUNY Albany, Albany Med, Albany Law type students. So I believe we might have sat on this for a couple months waiting for that student rental season to kick in. So we probably got that rented like, May, June 1st time.
Okay, now that you've had a couple of properties that needed a similar amount of work, similar type of work, and it sounds like you were starting to build a team around you that could handle the work, and you had individual people with certain skill sets that were A players in what they did. Did you have systems in place? Were you starting to write down systems of what was being done and what you could improve on, and little steps throughout the process that would be helpful for the next one?
Very, very rough, so they were, written down longhand, but nothing very specific. The two families and one families that we were doing were very, very similar. And, what was to write down? We're patching walls, refinishing hardwood floors. The one area that I wish that I did get much more granular with was how much each one of these improvements actually cost, through this repair process, because that would be very helpful on the next ones, realizing, okay, if you break down our labor time, what did the hardwood floors actually cost us to refinish? What was the cost of patching the walls? What was the cost of painting? So if I was to go back, those are the systems that would have been very, very helpful for the next projects. So you're able to go back and see what each task actually took and equate that into a line item on a budget, so then on the next projects, we're really able to utilize that information to create an accurate budget on the next deals.
Yeah, that's great advice. I'm trying to keep track of all the expenses for my property right now, and I bought some paint brushes, and I'm trying to start there and keep track along the way. I guess the reason why I asked about systems is because you'd mentioned in the past that at this point you probably could have outsourced some of the work and focused more on the business and scaling the business. Do you think having a system in place of this is the property we buy, this is the work we do to it, you could have gotten someone to go in there and do the work for you while you look for that next property?
Yeah, absolutely. At that point, we could have easily still had been the general contractor on the job, ran the project, but, hire someone to prep the walls, hire someone to paint the walls, hire someone to do the hardwood floors. As I'm speaking, the benefit to that would have been, instead of creating those line item budgets, seeing how long it would take for us to do those projects, if we hired each one of those projects out, it would have been individually invoiced, and then it would have been simple to keep track of those line items, because each contractor would be charging according to each project, and then you would have that much more categorized, to create those budgets in the future.
Yeah, being a small business owner is kind of manageable, but scaling that into something bigger is where it's really getting tricky. Did you start looking for bigger properties at this time? Because most of your investments had been two families, a couple single families. Did you have the mentality of, I'm a real estate investor, I want to go get a 20 unit building?
No, not at all. Not at all. We were still focused on those smaller properties. So as you were asking that question, I'm trying to really delve in to my memory bank here. But no, we were really focused in at that point on those distressed properties that you could get well under market value, do the value add, get the work done, and you create that instant equity. So at that point, the pattern was there as far as buy for 50, put 20,000 in and it's worth 100. So once again, I explained in a previous podcast was, all right, 572 Myrtle is now done. Another $30,000 of equity created, add it to the net worth statement and move on to the next one.
What do you think kept you there? Because it sounds like you're comfortable doing that. What do you think stopped you from looking for those bigger properties?
I really hadn't started other than that commercial property that we bought at the auction on the front lawn and ultimately flipped it. At that point, it was an outlier type opportunity that turned into a great result. Looking back and now discussing it in detail, at this point, probably in my late 20s and wish that I would have been able to make that jump saying, okay, we did great on this commercial property. Let's do more. Let's expand our focus and scale for that matter. But I was still focused in on those small properties. I guess, looking back at a lot of things in my life right up till now, once I get comfortable with something, it's tough for me to break out. And it really, now I'm really thinking my entire journey up till now in real estate. Geez, I was a buy and hold guy for over 25 years and so many other facets of my life. I live in the same house I grew up in. I get comfortable with things and for me to change, I guess, it's, something that I don't want to say is difficult for me. It's just I get comfortable with things.
Yes, that's certainly human nature. And you can look at it on a micro level of your daily schedule or on a bigger scale of your career and your whole life. I guess I'm just trying to give it back to you because on the last episode, you asked in 5 years, will I be ready to syndicate apartment complexes? And that'd be when I'm 29. So at this point, you're 29. I'm asking, why weren't you syndicating? I don't think syndicating was an option at that point in time. Do you think if you had some of the resources that are available now, such as a podcast and the books and all those information platforms for multifamily real estate investing, do you think you would have had that thought to look for bigger properties?
Here I am now, after you throw that back at me, I got to, take my glasses off and clean the lenses and see if I can look at it a different way. Yes, this is why I want to offer my experience to you and anybody else out there. That my experience, they are what they are. You can't change them at this point, but I wish I could go back and be able to have that vision and that growth mindset. Don't get me wrong. I was a type of guy that we were growing. I was focused. We're at this point, we're buying multiple properties each year, but that scaling idea, still wasn't with me. I was just continuing to buy those properties we were comfortable with, but if I was able to coach anybody going forward, depending on what their appetite is as far as growth, I would be able to share my experiences and maybe reshape what their plans are.
Yeah, that's great. Scaling is hard, but that's where the real value is. So going back to the tenants, you said they were mostly university students, some graduate students. Were there any bad experiences? Anything you learned from these tenants?
No, this property was pretty good. We, just like most, you have hiccups along the way, but as we, we're in the middle of this conversation with this property, this is why this is fun. This blast from the past, property by property with you, because things come to mind as we're talking, which is fun. And now I'm remembering, property number 5, 2 Kent Street. We had a couple of girls that were going to SUNY Albany, and they had been tenants at 2 Kent Street for a few years, and they were anxious to get into an opportunity. This was a 4-bedroom, 1.5 bath house. So for students who are in an apartment, to have a house opportunity is great. So, they were great tenants. We communicated regularly with them. And when they knew that we had this house that we were fixing up, they wanted to rent it. So, we had them for probably 3 years, and they were fantastic tenants, picture perfect for student style tenants, paid their rent, very, easy to manage building with that style tenant. And that's pretty much what we got. From there on in, this house was able to get that student group, 3 or 4 people, and they would stay for 3 or 4 years. So you're able to go down the road and have chunks of tenants, 3 or 4 years a pop, which make it easy. That's one of the benefits to single family rentals. If you do it correctly, you get people that stay, don't turn over, and they take care of the property like they own it. And that's how the single families work, because typically they may not have the cash flow that even a 2 family is going to have, let alone a 3 and a 4. So with a thinner cash flow on the single family rental, it's extremely important, that you don't have huge expenses on a monthly, annual basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I think back to the stereotypes on college students, and you walk into the girls that are renting and they have candles on and pillows and blankets everywhere. And then you walk into the guy's apartment and there's holes in the wall and you just beer kegs and it's an absolute mess. Did you see that at all with your rentals? That difference in renter quality?
Stereotypes. You're dealing that's
it is, but from my own experience, there is some validity there. And you, as a landlord, you can't necessarily pick who you rent to. But I'm just wondering, from your experiences, did those stereotypes prove to be true?
a lot of the times, but then you would be, then you're like, whoa, what happened here? I got some girl tenants that it looks like guys are renting. So yeah, I had the same stereotypes. And then just like anything, you can poke holes in all of that, because you do see examples where the guy tenants are neat as a pin and girl tenants aren't. So typically, with the college age kids, yeah, the girls are gonna keep a better apartment than the guys.
Mm-hmm. And did you have an exit strategy for this one? You're just adding it to your portfolio at that point?
Yeah, we're just building a portfolio.
Anything else you want to add for the property?
No, that's it. This one, fortunately, I wish it wouldn't make for great podcasts, but the goal here for any landlord as you're building your portfolio, if you can talk about how great the property ran and it's completely uneventful and the tenants are always great and they pay their rent and there's really nothing interesting to talk about, that's what you call an efficient portfolio, efficient properties. So, this one, like I said, had its hiccups, but for the most part, it ran pretty well over the years.
Yeah, it's fun to talk about the stories now, but in the moment, I'm sure it's not fun to deal with all that.
No, whenever there's stories, whenever there's events, it equals, energy to put in to solves different challenges. It takes you away from your growth at the time, but it's a cost of doing business. Let's be real. We're buying buildings in a city with older properties, and a large part of our target base could be students. So, you're gonna, you have to be, aware of some of the things that come up along the way, and it's the cost of doing business.
Yep. You can make a lot of money in the industry, but sometimes you do have to work, and that's part of it.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, David.